Very happy now to be back with Massachusetts State Senate Minority Leader Bruce Tarr. Senator Tarr, welcome back. Bona fiesta and happy summer.
Well, thanks, Rick. Bona fiesta. And it does appear that summer has finally arrived, although that's been questionable over the last several weeks.
Oh, I know, but I must comment on your appearance at the fiesta. You're Italian. I don't understand a word of it, but it sounded very enthusiastic, and you got a great review. So congratulations.
Well, thanks, Rick. I was very enthusiastic about it being at the opening night of the fiesta. It was an incredible night, and the fiesta is such a wonderful part of our lives and a wonderful tradition. And Rick, it's really interesting to think about the fact that this was the 96th year that it has happened, and we just concluded last night at about midnight the fiesta for this year. An amazing tradition.
It is, and we had some guests from out of state and out of country actually at our house over the entire weekend, and they're fascinated by it, and a great community event, but also a great family traditional event for Gloucester fishermen.
You know, what's interesting, Rick, is that this year the greasy pole seems to be getting a lot of attention. Not that it doesn't get attention on an average year, but it seems to be getting a lot of attention this year. But one of the things that I like the most about the fiesta is actually something that gets very little attention, and that happens roughly at 11 o'clock on Sunday night. Happened last night. I know your daughter was there, and it's something that I think harkens back to the original days of the fiesta and the purpose of the fiesta, when St. Peter is walked around the fort neighborhood by a huge group of people with just one band, and it just is a magical thing because it's nighttime, it's almost midnight. People are very enthusiastic. They're chanting in homage to St. Peter. And it really just reminds us that the purpose of the fiesta originally was to pull us together as a community, to pay homage to the patron saint of fishermen, and to really honor the importance of faith in our lives. And so some of the other things rightly get attention, but I think that closing procession really should get more attention because it really is the essence of the fiesta.
Yeah, for sure. I'll second that. All right, Senator, down to business. What's the status of the budget?
So, Rick, the negotiators on the conference committee between the House and the Senate are still working on a final version of the budget that will need to come back to the House and Senate as a conference committee report. But until that happens, it's important that we recognize that state government needs to continue operating. And our fiscal year begins on July 1st, and we need to have continuity. So the tool that we use for that, and I think this is very significant, is to pass an interim budget. It's sometimes called a 1/12th budget if it's covering 1 month, or sometimes it's even a 1/52nd budget if it's covering 1 week. In this case, we did a 1/12th budget here in the legislature today. The House and the Senate both have passed it this morning, and it's back on its way to the desk of Governor Baker, or in this case, Lieutenant Governor Driscoll, who is acting governor while Governor Healy is away in Ireland on a trade mission. But Rick, the significance of this is we don't allow ourselves to get to the point where there's a threat that state government won't be able to operate and people won't be able to get the benefits that they usually get from state government, or that we won't be able to support municipalities with the dollars that we provide them in support. We don't do that in Massachusetts. We pass a 1/12th budget and we say, look, if we don't get the budget done by July 1st, nothing will stop. We will have that degree of continuity. And I actually have a copy of it right here. And it's, if you can see, the top number is very, very large, Rick. It's about $6.6 billion. But what's significant about this is that the language in this bill, and it's a very short bill, it's actually only 2 pages long, and it was filed by the governor on June 20th in anticipation of us needing to have this tool in place. And just a few days later, the legislature has adopted it, and now it goes back for final approval. But the significance of this is that it's only a contingency plan. So there's language in the budget that says, if we pass the General Appropriations Act, the main budget for the next fiscal year, this becomes moot. But if we don't, its provisions are operational until we pass the budget for the coming fiscal year. And I just think this is one of those aspects of government that doesn't get a lot of recognition. But that's because we don't reach a crisis, and we intentionally don't reach a crisis. And so I think it's important to bring a little bit of attention to it. And that's why I wanted to discuss it with you here this morning.
Totally forgot to put my headset on. Sorry about that. Well, the mic. I hope you can hear me okay.
I
think that's another example, Senator, of where the federal government could learn from state government. So that's impressive. Not so impressive, I think. I have a question about $2.5 billion being misplaced or something, or some kind of a mix-up a month or so ago.
So, yeah, Rick, and this is an important story, and it's one that is ongoing. It hasn't reached a conclusion yet. So we recently learned from the federal government that they are alleging that we used inappropriately about $2.5 billion of federal money to be able to pay the extended unemployment benefits that folks got during the early days of the pandemic. And there's still a discussion going on between the Healey administration and the federal government about whether or not that is exactly the case and what the remedy ought to be for it. But Rick, to be fair, we need to go back to those days, and I think we all remember them, when everything seemed to be closing down around us. Folks couldn't go to work. We needed to provide these benefits, and the federal government was telling us, please get this money out as quickly as you can. The other thing that maybe folks aren't as familiar with is that the federal government was changing the rules on a regular basis, a frequent basis, about how to do this. So to its credit, the Baker-Polito administration was trying to get the money out, was trying to keep people able to survive with their household budgets and put these dollars out. So I think we have a fair case to make that Massachusetts did exactly what we were intended to do, which is to help people in that time of need. And in fact, Massachusetts is one of the states that actually got a discretionary grant of federal ARPA money to be able to deal with these kind of things. So while the feds may say, well, it didn't come from the right pocket, I would argue that under the circumstances, this was the kind of thing that money was intended to be used for. So the Healey administration is negotiating with the federal government, and hopefully we'll find a resolution to this for the $2.5 billion. And I think the resolution ought to be an acknowledgement that, yes, the rules were changing, B, we were in an emergency situation, and C, we fulfilled the intent of what these dollars were intended for and what this program was intended for. So this is a to be continued for right now, Rick. But the other thing I would certainly hope is that our federal legislative delegation is going to weigh in on this and weigh in forcefully and vocally about Massachusetts doing the right thing. And the accounting may not be what folks want it to be today, but at the time, it was exactly the purpose that these dollars were intended for. And I would also point out, Rick, that there were 2 initial audits of this program that did not find a problem. It's only the 3rd audit that uncovered what is allegedly the discrepancy. So certainly something to be considered very serious, because it's a $2.5 billion gap. But I think there's a way forward on this, and I hope we can find it.
That's encouraging. Also encouraging, the last time we talked, you were talking about a possible tax relief package for people. And what's the status of that bill now?
So, Rick, this is something that I have been working on very strenuously for the last almost 2 years. And my colleagues have as well, to be fair. And so as we stand today, the House has passed its version of a tax relief package. The Senate has passed our version. And today, we had the very first meeting of the conference committee, the 3 members of the House and the 3 members of the Senate, to reconcile those 2 bills and produce a final version that we can vote on and send to the governor. So I'm encouraged, Rick. We've had some false starts on this, and it's been hard to get a tax relief package. The House has voted on it a couple of times in the past. The Senate has voted on it 2 or 3 times. But today, as we stand here and as we sit here talking, I'm very optimistic that we are going to get significant tax relief for people in Massachusetts.
You're the most optimistic public official I know, and I appreciate that.
Well, thanks, Rick.
All right, Senator, we'll talk again. Thank you.
Thank you very much.